Thanks so much for being here. Arloa, I know some of us may know a little bit about the history of Breakthrough. Can you take a couple minutes and just explain how it started, how you got involved in it, what prompted that?
We get so bored with that question. I'm just kidding.
We talked beforehand.
I know. Everybody. So some of you, if you haven't heard my story, I started Breakthrough out of a storefront at First Evangelical Free Church up on Berwyn and Ashland because homeless people were coming into the church wanting help, and we felt like it was not good stewardship to just hand out money without knowing people's situations. So I, over the course of the last 23 years now, I like to talk about, and it's a CCD kind of story about going upriver. Most of you know this probably, but you start downstream and you see a baby in the river floundering and needing care. So you reach in and you care for this baby. Of course, it's the compassionate thing to do. It's the merciful thing to do. And then you see another one and another one. And pretty soon downstream, you set up a great mission post where you're caring for people who are in distress, which is what we've done. We have wonderful services for homeless adults with lots of, with job training, housing, placement, case management, trauma-informed approach to caring for women who've been sexually exploited, and men who male initiative program, and devotions and Bible studies. And I think we've gotten really good at that, have wonderful centers for homeless adults. But eventually somebody says, maybe we should go upstream and find out how these babies are getting tossed in the river, which makes a lot of sense, right? So for me, I started to go upstream, and I started job training. People needed employment, and so you begin to do things that you think are getting more at the core of the issue of poverty and homelessness. Eventually, we migrated to the west side of Chicago, which is a whole long story, but basically because we needed space, we wanted to house women. And in the process of going door to door through the neighborhood to get to know people, I live there now in East Garfield Park, and I love it. But the challenge that they said kept recurring was that they were concerned about their kids. They watched their kids gravitate towards the corners because there just weren't opportunities for child development. And so the kids, they weren't safe. They didn't have, the schools were underperforming. And so so we started a youth program. Okay, we'll do an after-school program. And we did a little summer studies, and it caught on, and it grew. And we started a preschool. And it was really just because someone in the neighborhood had a child who was preschool age and had time and decided what she wanted to provide for her daughter, she would provide for the community. Well, what we saw was the impact of early childhood education to change the trajectory of someone's life was going way upstream. To catch the kids when they're 3 or 4 years old, and then surround them with love and support, following them up through the grades, making sure that they get a good education all the way. I always say we don't work with at-risk kids. Our kids are bright, and they're talented, and they're achieving. And, we have robotics clubs and film clubs and photography and culinary arts and sewing. And so the kids try on a variety of different skills, and they're, intellectually, they're achieving, they're getting good grades. And, I'm going on and on. It's a long answer, but let me just say this. It works. It totally works. So we have a couple right now. In fact, we've hired Otis to be our head of security, right? He and his wife, Christine, met when they were 12 in our after-school program. They got married. He went to the Navy. She went to college. Now they have a 3-year-old in our preschool. And so you begin to see the generational effect of this investment in children. So I really believe in early childhood education, along with caring for homeless adults and teenagers. And, of course, that's the caring thing to do. The other thing I think is so key is for a neighborhood like ours is job creation. And you're hearing it over and over here. I know you are, because everybody wants a job. I live in this neighborhood. I get asked for a job every day People sit on my front, my steps asking me, do you have any work? Do you have any work? I want to work at Breakthrough. I hear that all the time. Well, we don't have that many jobs, right? So we started a business. Joel Hammernick, I'm sure, has talked about Sunshine Enterprises. We have Breakthrough Enterprises. I just copy everybody. That's what I do. Breakthrough Urban Ministries was Circle Urban Ministries. I just took their bylaws and copied them, but I think Joel is on the right track. We've got to start businesses where people own, their means to income and economic development in a neighborhood. And so we have a business that we've started assembling. And this is a niche, I know, but it came to us through a corporation, assembling cardboard food displays. That's one. And then we're partnering with Garfield Produce, and they're producing produce hydroponically indoors. So, we've been growing pot in our neighborhood for years, so why not grow produce and sell it to the chefs and make some money? So that's a long answer to your story, but what I think people here might be interested in hearing is that there's a variety of ways that you do this, okay? So when Garfield Produce, I had these people come in our neighborhood and do asset-based community development, ABCD, asset-based community. You go in a neighborhood, you see what are the assets that can provide revenue. Well, they came up with empty lots and empty buildings, boarded up buildings, lots of space. So they came up with this idea of urban farming. And I'm like, you know what, growing broccoli 3 months a year is not going to lift the economy of our neighborhood. But then they started doing this, they came up with this business plan to grow indoors. And at the time, Breakthrough, we were in the middle of building our family plex, which is, it's done now, it's beautiful. But I felt like we couldn't really start growing indoors. And so they started themselves, formed a corporation. I wanted to support it. I wanted to figure out ways to support it. I can support it with a lot of connections, but also we found out, and we worked this all out with the lawyers, people can make donations to Breakthrough for economic development in our community, for job creation, and then we can make loans to for-profit companies that want to start business in our community. So if you want to start a business, come to East Garfield Park and raise money, and Breakthrough will make loans to you, and it's all legitimate, it's all legal. But when Breakthrough, then we had this other offer about the, food displays, and then we decided, okay, we want to own that. In fact, the Cahey Food Distributors wanted to invest in that, and had the business, brought us the business. So in this case, we did the same thing. We went to all the lawyers, we got all this pro bono legal advice, and we set up a for-profit corporation that Breakthrough is the only stockholder. So I like to say this, we have a wholly owned subsidiary for-profit business called Breakthrough Enterprises. But, so I think some people are doing it at using their nonprofit status, which we still are. We have Lil Kickers Soccer in our gym, and they make money, and we get some of that money. We have Lawndale Christian Health Centers in our family plex with a 10-exam room clinic. They pay us rent. So as a nonprofit, we can legitimately receive funding from these kinds of sources. But when it comes to job creation, I really, we're experimenting, is what I'm trying to say. And we're open to all kinds of ideas. I think we might fail. Of course, I don't know what percentage of the businesses. Jimmy Lee would know what percentage of the businesses fail. So let's have some really great failures, and let's keep trying, I think.
Thank you. I think
you have any other questions?
You may have answered every single question that I was going to ask. My questions seem so boring now. No, I actually do have one. How do you measure effectiveness? I know there's some of the intangibles, like seeing the cycle of that family, but how do you measure
Right.
it?
So you have your anecdotal stories, and they touch our hearts, and a lot of people really want to hear those stories, and we have a lot of stories. But the movement right now is for metrics, and what are your numbers, and how do you show your return on investment, and so you got I always say we have to reach out to the right brain and the left brain, and so we're working at this. So we use Social Solutions Efforts to Outcomes, which is a software program where we put a lot of data in there. And then we have a balanced scorecard, which we use for tracking our metrics. So we set goals for what we want to achieve, and then we're able to measure according to those goals. And so there are things like what percentage of our kids are at or above their grade level, and we can watch that, move up and down, is what we're doing working. When I got Stephen Levitt to come in and do some research with us, he's the author of Freakonomics. When I said, we want you to come in and do research with us, he said, nonprofits don't want research because they don't want to know that they're not being effective. And I'm like, oh, pull that out of my, God, no, we want to know, because why do I want to waste my life doing something that's not effective? Now, I believe when a woman has been abused and, violated and thrown in a trunk, I'm going to give her water, and I'm not going to ask her to, she doesn't have to change before I'm going to, show the compassion of Christ that changes people. But how do you measure? What things can you measure? I mentioned last night that we're working at reaching a tipping point in our community, so where it's normal for kids to be successful, for instance. So there are 1,600 kids under the age of 16 in our zone. We have about 720, probably with the Familyplex, it's more like 1,000 now that are involved in, sports activities and things like that. But we only had room for 85 in our after-school program because we didn't have space for more than that. We couldn't afford to rent. So anyway, now we've got room for 240, which, compared to Donita and her, how many 10,000 kids she's working with, is a drop in the bucket. But what we're trying to do is go really deep with these, now 240 kids who will be in our after-school program, but especially starting with growing our preschool from 20 to 100. So 100 kids that are every year coming into this kind of system where now we can track numbers. We think if we can get to, what we're saying 1,600, that we could reach a tipping point in the neighborhood where then whether or not they're involved in Breakthrough probably won't matter too much, because it'll be the community, the force of the community, community standards and peer relationships will be pulling kids up instead of down. You get what I'm saying? I think it's a strategy. I think we're going to test it, and it's a long-term strategy. This doesn't happen in a year or two. I'm giving my life to this, and if it doesn't work, I'll die happy because I tried.
That's great. I think I just have one more question. What advice do you have for anyone who's looking to start a ministry, specifically in areas that face a lot of social challenges?
I think we all learn this lesson of, don't come in on your high horse. Get to know people. Get to know the neighbors. Find out what they want. We do this with the homeless. What is it that you need? We don't tell them what we think they need. We let them set their goals, and then we'll work with them. It's always a hand up, not a hand out. Coming alongside. You learn this language. You're coming alongside people. You're walking with people. My advice would be, and people come to me all the time now, I'm sure those of us who've been in ministry for a while, people come and say, how did you do it? I want to start something. How do I do it? I always say, build a board. First thing you got to do is have people around you. If there aren't people around you, then you're not a leader, or your idea isn't resonating. And don't ever do it by yourself. That's suicide. Build a movement of people, and the other thing, and then just do the next right thing. Breakthrough has grown like a snowball; it just gets packed on. You try to keep it balanced from being lopsided or falling off, the edge. But so that's what I do. But over the years, you just keep doing the next right thing and learning and growing. And I would say, and Jimmy touched on this. Any successful, I think of Groupon or Grubhub. You have to learn how to raise money. And I don't think we talk about that enough. Even if it's a for-profit business, you have to come up with revenue in order to do good. And yeah, we can all work for nothing and, panhandle, but, that's not sustainable. And so when I worked with Youth for Christ back in the 70s, I'm that old, I raised my salary. They forced me to raise my salary. I had to raise $750 a month from my friends who I had to come up with a list of 100 friends. I didn't have that many friends, so I was asking everybody I knew for their friends. And, over the years, I stayed in touch with those people, even if I wasn't in direct ministry. And some of them are continuing. I mean, I have a guy who's supported me since I was 21, and I'm 61. However, that's 40 years. And he's a lot older than me already, But my point is, I've kept these people. They believe, people give to people. And so I think you want to create this group of people who are going through life with you, and then continue to develop the resources, because there's nothing like walking into a sparkly new building, There's nothing like being able to hire somebody to manage your information technology, to hire people to do these good things that just make the work. You have to keep the machine oiled, right? And so I don't apologize. I ask people for money all the time, because it's not like you're giving it to me. I say, I'm doing this for the kids, I'm doing this for the babies. And we have an opportunity for you to invest in something that's meaningful. So if you've got resources, what a better way to live your life than to make a lot of money. Deuteronomy 8:18 says it. Remember, it's God who's given you the ability to create wealth. If God has given you the ability to create wealth, then what a joy to be able to spread that out, into the broken places of the world, the dark holes, where people are disposed of and dispensed of, and to say we can make a difference together. I mean, it's a joy. It's a joy to have that partnership.
Arloa, thank you. I mean,